Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duckbricks. I'm Chris, and I have in hand two brand new LEGO Monkie Kid 2025 sets coming out on January 1st, and we're gonna dive into an in-depth review of both of these sets right now today. We have, of course, the Mythical Creature Qilin as well as Erlang Celestial Mech, two of the newest LEGO Monkie Kid sets, and I'm really curious to see how these fit into the story. A pretty small wave for Monkie Kid this year in 2025 with only two sets as opposed to many more last year, but we'll have to see if it's going to be getting a summer wave, and let's dive into the sets right now. Okay, so we're going to start off with the larger of the two sets, and that is Erlang's Celestial Mech. This is yet another one of the large-scale LEGO Monkie Kid mechs retailing for $90 when it releases on January 1st, coming with 806 pieces. The minifigures included are, of course, Erlang, who has only appeared one other time before, Monkey King, as well as Monkie Kid in an outfit we've seen before, Mr. Tang in a brand new outfit, as well as a Celestial General. Now, altogether, this is a pretty interesting build, and again, the current season of the TV show is not out yet, so we don't really know what the story-based reasons as to why they are fighting are, but it is really cool to see a full-on brick-built mech for a pretty obscure character that we haven't really seen in the show yet. Now, first of all, most of the budget for all $90 in this set goes towards the mech. It has posable knees, somewhat posable ankles, and really nice dog-like ornaments on the side because, of course, Erlang is often associated with his celestial dog, which is a major part of the character. It also includes a very large fabric cape on the back of the mech, which isn't something we normally see for large-scale LEGO builds nowadays, but definitely adds a lot of flavor and character to the build, because the minifigure who is included to pilot the mech does have a very similarly proportioned cape, which is really cool, making this feel like a bigger version of that character. Color scheme wise, it is predominantly white, gold, with dark gray and little bits of highlights of black, but really the black is only used for the dog-like components, which I think are really good. It actually brings out a lot of character to the mech, and before we dive into the actual build here, let's start off with the minifigures. I'm going to start off with a look at Erlang here because he is kind of the titular character in the set. Erlang receives a new recolor of the LEGO Monkie Kid Lion Guard armor shoulder pad pieces in black, which really fit the character very well, as well as a brand new torso and leg print. The hair is the same, and the head print is a new one as well, showcasing a more technological mask, but I really love the way the printing is done on this character. The mask looks really, really cool, and I also love just the dog-like emblem in the center of the chest. It feels like it adds so much character to this minifigure, and of course the staff is great as well because it's kind of like a small version of the staff the mech itself uses, which is very cool. The hairpiece having the golden crown is not new for the figure, having appeared in the other version of the figure that we got for the Heavenly Realm set a few years back, but I do think it is a really nice touch, and just getting a fully detailed minifigure that is based off of this Chinese mythological character is super cool. He's definitely one of my favorite minifigures from this particular wave of LEGO Monkie Kid sets, and for good reason. Everything about the color scheme is super clean. The blacks, the golds, the whites, and even a little bit of orange all seek to actually add so much character to this minifigure. Compared to the original version of Erlang that we got all the way back for the Heavenly Realm set, he has a slightly updated color scheme. Unfortunately, the lavender has been removed, and I honestly think it would have been really cool to see that lavender color, but I get why they shifted it around to orange, especially because we did just get a lavender-focused celestial being in the form of Neza, who had lavender as the main secondary color. The celestial dog, however, has not been changed from that set. It's a really nice black dog mold with a printed gold crown on the center of the head, which is super cool, kind of adding on to that mythological flair. Moving on to the next minifigure who is exclusive to the set, we have the Monkey King here. This is one of the least kitted out versions of Monkey King. There's no cape, there's no sort of feather on the back of the head, but it actually does work okay as kind of a more casual, slightly armored up version of the character, but nothing quite as fancy as we've seen in the past. It's not my favorite Monkey King figure, and it definitely is one of the least interesting ones, at least in terms of the design, but I do like some of the teal details on the sides of the legs, going around the hips. I think this is a really nice touch, as well as the printing on the legs themselves. It's just a pretty solid figure, but nothing truly revolutionary, especially compared to the very, very extravagant ones we've gotten in the past. past. Moving on, speaking of figures that feel a little bit less detailed than they should be, the Celestial General here is a pretty mixed figure in my opinion. First of all, for LEGO Monkie Kid, this is one of the first times that for a non-civilian character they have not been able to print the legs, which really suggests that maybe the theme is going under some budget cuts for this particular wave. I certainly hope not, but again, it's just using a generic city face. The new mold for the helmet kind of being lion detail oriented is really cool, and the ability to stick a feather in the top is nice as well, but I can't help but feel like they were kind of skimping out on the amount of print detailing here, especially because for a Celestial General, just having a generic city face with just one expression doesn't really sit right with me. With the feather removed, you can see the helmet in more detail here, which I think is a really cool mold. I love the new mold they introduced here, and we also got one in silver for the smaller set we're going to be taking a look at in a little bit, but overall, not a big fan of how they were able to pull off these minifigures because clearly LEGO just had one new torso print to work with, one new helmet, and that was pretty much it. Moving on to Mr. Tang here, he is sporting a brand new look for his torso print, although again, no printing on the legs, which is a little bit unfortunate given that we are pretty much used to full-on detail when it comes to Monkie Kid. What is very cool though is that he has a new accessory. It's a Dumpling element which appears across this and the other Monkie Kid set, and I'm sure is going to turn up in a number of other sets coming out in 2025 as well. With the scarf removed, you can see the outfit he is on is kind of an interesting mix between a leather jacket with maybe some armor as well. It's not the most interesting thing, but I actually think it does work pretty well for Mr. Tang. And finally, I probably have the least to say about Monkie Kid because this is an outfit that we have seen before, particularly in this year's lineup of sets. It's kind of like a mech suit version of an outfit for him, as well as some armor. He has a very similar color scheme as May in this outfit as well, and I actually think it's really nicely detailed. The gold, the teal, all the details around it are really cool. It's just not really the most interesting because, again, we've seen it before, and in the past it did come with a helmet that he could wear, which I thought enhanced the figure a lot, and is definitely something I wish we could actually have for this set. He does, however, come with a nice little hover bike, and this is now our time to move into the actual main builds of the set. The hover bike has a light on one side and a place to hold his staff on the other, and I like how you can adjust the angle of these engines on the sides. It's nothing too crazy, but I think it's pretty charming for what it is. It has some pretty good studs in the side techniques, and it feels pretty compact, almost like a Space Police 3 type of hover bike sort of thing, which is always a win for me. The other minor side build is a cloud for either Monkey King or the Celestial General to ride. We see the Celestial Warriors riding these clouds on the box art, so I guess similar to Monkey King, they have the power to harness the clouds, but again, there's nothing super crazy going on there, and we can move on to the main build, which is the Celestial Mech. Now I'm going to be completely honest, I have mixed feelings about this mech. I feel like this is one of the better Monkie Kid style of mechs, but just looking at some of the other mechs that LEGO has put out over the many years, especially this year, and I hate to bring up comparisons to Cole's Titan Dragon mech because they are accomplishing very different things at very different price points, I do have to say that this does feel a little bit simplified compared to what we've seen LEGO do and pull off when it comes to mechs. First of all, the nice thing is that yes, it does have knees and an opening cockpit as well to seat the minifigure, but the main build of the chest is very, very plain and flat. There's actually not really much going on there, and you can very much see that it literally is just a flat rectangle. It is cool to see on the inside of the cockpit, you have all these different stickered control panels. I think that is a nice touch, and having it fold around the minifigure is cool. I do like the shaping there, but it is somewhat gappy in the way it's built. It's utilizing just mixel joint connectors attached onto Technic lift arms, and overall, it just feels like there's just some gaps where you can see the minifigure legs and obviously see the very flat surface beneath. That being said, there are things that I really do like about it. The way the head is built, I think, is really cool. I love the feathered plume on the top of the head, the way the eyes are angled kind of in an angry fashion, and the weapon looks really cool as well. It's just utilizing pieces we've seen before, but they're all built out in a trident-like shape, which I think is super cool. The back of the mech is very simple. It is just using a standard boat element in black, which honestly is okay because most of it is covered up by the cape, so I wouldn't really expect it to be more detailed than that, and because it does have knees, you can get this in a number of different poses, such as having it literally take a knee like this, which is pretty cool, But you're going to notice very quickly that posability is extremely limited by one major thing, and that is, well, the fact that the ankles are incredibly restricted. Because the way the mech is built, LEGO wanted to make this as stable as possible. They've made it such that the ankles can only swing side to side. They can't really bend forward and back that much, so if you want to get this in a walking pose, unless you're balancing one foot off the ground like I'm doing right here, it is a little bit difficult to get this in any sort of pose that just doesn't have it topple over immediately. It's almost ironic that in LEGO's attempts to make this mech more stable than it actually should be normally, they actually made it less stable to actually get in different poses other than just standing up perfectly straight, which is a major con to me. The arms as well definitely could have used more articulation. I do like the way the shoulders are mounted, and I feel like you get a decent range of articulation there, but unfortunately the elbows and wrists and hand are all just mounted on one single ratchet joint connector, meaning that for certain positions you can't even rotate it backwards or forwards to have some lateral motion. You really can only swing it in a circle, which I guess is okay for certain poses like swinging the staff around, but there's really not that much you can do with it when it comes to posability. It's very limited when it comes to what you can do to pose it around. You can even see right now, while I'm playing around with the set, it is quite difficult to get it to stand up in a dynamic pose and not just fall over unless it is perfectly standing stock straight, which almost feels like kind of going backwards to me. Again, LEGO was trying to make it not fall over as easily and trying to make the ankles stable, but they almost made it a little bit too stable in the way it was built. It's not necessarily bad, it's just something I feel like could have been improved, and the restriction in articulation in the elbows and wrists by having it just mounted on one single ratchet joint makes it a lot harder to pose. Like if you want to have the mech holding the staff in two hands, there are ways that you can make it look cool, and from certain angles, I do think that I can actually make this look cool, but it involves bending the staff a lot, which obviously is having like the fingers be flying off, and unless you're just sticking the arms out straight, it really just is very hard to get this into a more dynamic pose than what you can already do, and accomplished because they really wanted to limit the articulation here, which almost feels like a step backwards when it comes to LEGO mech design. Still, that being said, I do really enjoy the color scheme. I feel like the color scheme is really solid. The usage of keyed orange, flame yellowish orange, white, dark gray, and the gold, and just a little bit of a hint of black when it comes to the dogs is a really nice touch. And easily my favorite part of the set are the little brick-built dogs on the shoulders. I feel like those are super fun and just really cool that because they add so much character to it being a mech for Erlang, who of course is heavily associated with having a heavenly dog beside him, which is very nice. Overall, you can see you can get this into pretty decent poses, but for $90, I really am not 100% sure if I'm fully seeing the value here. I think that maybe for $70, $75, and $80 tops, this could be a little bit more reasonable, but $90 is only $10 less than what I consider to be the best LEGO mech ever in the form of Cole's Titan Dragon mech, and this is a far cry from that. It definitely feels to me that LEGO Monkie Kid is unfortunately taking a bit of a step back when it comes to the budgeting and design for the theme. Not saying the sets are bad or even any worse, but I remember when LEGO Monkie Kid was churning out LEGO movie quality sets, which I like to describe as sets that have so much love and iterations and development work put into them and really polished and some of the best LEGO sets on the market, and now it feels like Monkie Kid is kind of being exceeded by some other themes. Even LEGO Dreams is coming out with mechs that rival this one in terms of build construction and posability, which I definitely feel like is a bit of a miss, especially because Monkie Kid started off as literally having the best of the best. Only time will tell if this is going to be the final year for Monkie Kid. Personally, I certainly hope not, but that's a whole nother conversation as to how LEGO has completely not marketed Monkie Kid really anywhere outside of Asia. One final detail I do want to note is that there are exposed 1x3 plates on top of the mech, which initially I thought they were kind of out of place and felt kind of strange. They were just open studs, but it actually is a function. You're supposed to be able to mount the dog on his shoulder, so all is completely forgiven for that. That is actually a really cute function, and I'm a big fan of how they're able to pull that off. Overall, Erlang Celestial Mech is $90. It's not my favorite Monkie Kid mech. It's definitely not my least favorite either. I think my least favorite is probably the giant macaque mech, it kind of falls somewhere in between. It's just okay for me. Nothing super negative I have to say about it, but also nothing super positive. It's just another Monkey Kid mech, and I would really love to see the theme try to continue to innovate and push the boundaries on something new like the theme used to do to prevent it from stagnating with stuff like this. But with that, we can move on to the next set, and that is the Mythical Creature Qilin set number 80066, which comes with 791 pieces and retails for $70 on January 1st, which actually is pretty good value. This includes pretty much the entirety, or almost the entirety, of the Monkey Kid team, with MK, May, Sandy, and Pigy all sporting new outfits, the return of the Mo Cat mold with the mohawk on it, which is very nice. We first saw that in the LEGO Movie 2, and then in Monkey Kid, but we had been getting the kitten since, so it's actually really nice to get a return of that. And of course we do get one Celestial Warrior as well, basically the same exact version as the Celestial General, except this time it has a silver helmet and gray armor. The main focus of the set is on the Mythical Creature Qilin, which I definitely have a lot of thoughts on how they portrayed this as a LEGO set. In Chinese mythology, these are normally depicted as like hooved chimeras, which are very sleek and fast and slender usually, and obviously they have a very kind of flowing motion to them. If you look at artwork of what they actually look like, they're very majestic, they feel like they're very dynamic in the way they move, and I'm not necessarily sure if this set has that. But more on that when we get to the build. Let's start off with the minifigures. The best minifigure of the set is hands down MK the Monkey Kid, and thankfully they did spare no expense when crafting him. As is the case for most of the minifigures of MK that we do get, he has dual molded legs with printing on the side of the legs, which is really, really nice. It's actually really cool to see this, especially if, and again, we don't know if the rumors are true, but if the theme is on its way out, it is still nice that LEGO did decide to keep the quality consistent with all of the other versions of Monkey Kid and give him dual molded legs with printing. I love the cloud on the side of the shoes, and I also love how May appears in the same set sporting a very, very similar coat. It really is clear they're on the same team, with one side of their logo on the back being Monkey King, the other side being her dragon, but then they're wearing different undershirts underneath, calling back to some of their original outfits. Unfortunately though, May is just using plain white legs, and again, it's really clear that the theme kinda did suffer some budget cuts here, where basically they had an idea where they wanted to have as many minifigures as they could, but were clearly limited on the types of new prints they could introduce. On the other hand, I do actually like that she does fit in with the team. May and MK having very similar outfits is very cool, and again, while it would have been nice to have leg printing, I still do like that she does have a unique torso of her own, because they very easily could have given them the same exact torso, and I'm glad they didn't do that. Moving on to the next minifigure here, speaking of plain unprinted white legs, we have the Celestial Warrior, and once again, not a big fan of how they were able to pull these off. I feel like the concept of the Celestial Warriors is something that looks really cool in the show, and we've seen these guys in the show, but because they're just kind of constricted by the budget for the theme, it's just using a generic civilian head, which feels very strange to me, how one side is just terrified, and again, using just the same torso print across the sets, no printing on the legs at all, which is a bit disappointing, and just a simple golden sword that they're using from the Ninjago theme. The helmet is really cool to get, and I'm a big fan of the helmet. I'm sure that's going to come in handy when it comes to making your own castle-themed LEGO builds, but the minifigure by itself, especially because of the generic face, is not that exciting. Sandy, on the other hand, gets a pretty much of an upgrade when you get to his minifigure. They've actually managed to recolor the top knot hair element in orange instead of dark gray and in other colors it's appeared in before for the first time. Previously, he was just using the LEGO Mohawk piece, so it's actually really cool to see this being integrated for the character, and I feel like it really does work for his type of build. Of course, he does have a new torso as well. The legs are just reused from Ninjago, so nothing super special there, but at least they are printed, so that's a plus. And finally, we have Pigy over here, who does have a new outfit as well, with a striped shirt, blue overalls, as well as a jacket. I think it's a pretty cute option for Pigy to wear. He's got his normal chef's hat, and of course, the brand new Dumpling piece, which is very, very cool. If you follow Duckbricks, you know I love my cuisine, you know I love my food, so getting an official dedicated piece for a LEGO Dumpling is very cute. And finally, speaking of cute things, of course we do have to call out Mo the cat, who is unchanged from previous depictions, but very cool to actually have him as a full-on cat now, instead of the kitten that we've gotten for the past couple of years that typically scales a little bit better with Sandy, but LEGO decided, you know what, whatever, just include the cat with a mohawk. Now we're going to move on to the side builds, and the first side build that we have here is a Dumpling stand for Pigy. I like the usage of the new recolor of the wheel element in tan, which originates from the LEGO Architecture Notre Dame Cathedral set. Very cool to see that being used outside of these sets. And it's also really cool, if you can see, there is a brand new 1x1 clip with stud attachment piece being used here in gold, which is going to come in real handy in a ton of different sets. Very happy to get a piece like that. The cart folds open in typical Pigy food truck style with a blaster on the top, and I like their dedication to the bit of having all of Pigy's restaurant-oriented items have some sort of a shooter on the top, and you do have a nice sticker for the menu as well. Overall, it's a pretty simple side build. There's not much else I have to say about it other than a nice color scheme with the dark orange and the white and the tan wheels. It's just a nice little side build to accompany Pigy in the set, and it does come with another copy of that brand new Dumpling piece, which is very, very nice to see. Despite the small size, it is built pretty nicely. It's very stable. It's utilizing the longer bar elements to really lock in the construction of the way it works, and it's very satisfying to push around as well. So honestly, as a side build, I actually really like it. We also get another side build in the form of a small cloud for the Celestial Warrior to travel in. This is similar to the other cloud that we get in the larger set, but actually a little bit bigger. It's utilizing a couple of different white Unikitty tails, as well as the Monkey Kid cloud tile piece introduced earlier this year, and even some of the doggy doo-doo elements in white to act as swirls for the cloud, which actually work out really well. Altogether, it's just a nice little mode of transportation for the Celestial Warrior, and there isn't really much else to say about this one. Let's move on to the main part of the build. Once again, you are paying $70 for the Mythical Creature Qilin with 791 pieces, most of which are part of this build. There is a lot to like here, but there's also a lot of things that I definitely feel could have been a little bit better with how it's depicted. First of all, LEGO decided to go for more of a bulky and statuesque route for this type of character. Whereas when you look at artwork, yes, there are statues that do actually kind of look like this. There's also a lot of artwork that makes it feel a lot slimmer, and it does really feel like a lot of it is up to artistic interpretation. It's kind of just like a large-scale flaming lion, but to some degree, it does feel a little bit blocky and square and just very vertical in its construction. There's a very strong 90-degree angle being used for the neck, which is just pointing straight up from the body, and it doesn't really feel very organic in the way it's built. It feels almost more like a mechanical being rather than a living creature, which maybe it actually is supposed to be. It is having some mechanical details with the armor after all, and the eye is the previously printed mechanical robot dragon eye, so maybe it is supposed to be kind of a cross between both mechanical and organic, but it definitely feels a little bit rectangular and blocky to me for the creature. Still, I do like some of the small details, like the flames on the sides of the feet are very, very nice, using the flame element from the Samadhi fire pieces, and of course you have golden armor being used to cover the entirety of the creature. I think a lot of it is really nice, it's just that it could have been a lot more dynamic in the sculpting of the creature, which as of right now feels very rigid as a display piece. It is fully posable with the tail, the legs, and everything, and the upper and lower legs have different details with different types of flames shooting out of the back legs, which are just built up a little bit larger than the front ones, and you even have some mixel jointed golden cloud elements being mounted on the side for some more detail for the armoring, and overall I think it is really nicely detailed in general, just maybe a little bit stiff. My favorite part about the build is the head. I really do like the construction of the head and how it doesn't really use any pre-molded pieces. You can open and close the jaw, you can bend it back and forth, and my favorite thing about it is actually the back element, how they used one of the elemental mech armor elements from Ninjago to cover up the fact that this is mounted on a ball joint. And you're going to see that a lot clearer as we rotate the neck back and forth, but you can see it has that large armor piece behind the head here, and if you fold that down, it actually does look like continuous armor plating for the neck. Sure, the illusion is broken as soon as you move the head up and down, but if you kind of keep your finger in it, it really does look like sliding armor panels, which I think is really cool. It does also introduce a brand new nunchuck-like element introduced for this set, and I'm sure that's going to appear in many other sets, probably across Ninjago as well, where you have just a very short length of chain with some bars, which is going to be super useful. And again, this also does have mounted stud shooters, which you can angle up and down, which also make it sort of feel like more of a mechanical creature as opposed to something that you would see be a living beast. On the back here for the tail, we have a really interesting element being used. It's basically like the older dinosaur tip of the tail piece, except this time it's connected by Technic pin instead of having the Technic pin built into the piece. And I actually love how the tail is built with 4 different golden clouds on the sides, making it feel very unique in its aesthetic. Looking at the face head on, it might be a little bit hard to parse what creature it's supposed to be. I definitely could see this head being used for something like a dragon, but then as you kind of go onto the back, I like how the teal acts as sort of a mane for the lion. You have all sorts of different ridged and wedge elements being used to make it look like the fur is flowing backwards behind it. So overall, it's not really the end of the world that this kind of looks like a dragon, because it is supposed to be some sort of a mythical creature after all, so you can draw your own interpretations from what it's supposed to look like. Still, the head being as posable as it is really fun to play with and does lend a lot of help to make this feel and look alive. Moving on to the rest of the body of the creature though, I do want to give a special highlight to a detachable flyer which is mounted on the back. Both minifigures are mounted on the back of this flyer, and it literally is just attached by a couple of studs, so that entire thing pops off and you can have it soar off. With the flyer removed, that is what this looks like. It is teal and white to go alongside May's color scheme. It has a nice flag on the back showcasing the Monkey Kid and May dual dragon and monkey logo on the back, which is very nice. And of course it does have a nice little gold color scheme with some stickers on the winglets. Nothing super crazy going on here, super simple build, but I think it is nice as a little detachable vehicle. However, with the vehicle removed, I actually feel like the creature is starting to really come to life and feel more alive, especially with the bulk removed from the back. I think one major improvement could have been if the neck was mounted at an angle, if somehow they had a building technique to not have that neck mounted at 90 degrees, because I feel like that is a big miss here, making it feel very blocky and rigid in the construction. If only they were able to mount it at a very slight angle, like either forwards or backwards, I feel like would have done a lot, instead of basically just having it be a straight column that sticks up from the torso. Because no matter how many side elements they use to try to detail it, I still feel like it definitely is very clearly just a straight 90-degree angle. When it comes to posing around the legs, you do have a full range of articulation thanks to each of the legs being mounted on ratchet joints, but because of the fact that the ankles are pretty limited in the poses you can accomplish and there are literally no knees, there's honestly not that much you can actually do with it. I mean, I guess you can raise one of the legs up to make it look like it's running, but they're so stiff and rigid because they're just very much fixed pieces of builds, where that as soon as you bend some inwards and some forwards, it does immediately put the model at an angle. Now that's not necessarily a bad thing. I actually think that this is a fairly dynamic pose as it is to have it mounted at an angle, but it does showcase some of the limitations in posability here. It reminds me a lot of the Guardian Lion set that we got for Monkey Kid back in 2020, which was never really one of my favorite Monkey Kid sets. It definitely felt a little bit rigid to me in the way it was built, and this just feels like a more upgraded version of that. The color scheme though is very nice, and I do like the reds, the dark reds being integrated under the undersides of the legs, and the flame yellowish orange or the Keat orange being used for flaming stripes alongside the build, plus the golden armor and the teal mane really do make it stand out. So color scheme wise, like usual, Monkey Kid is doing a pretty good job. Altogether, this is a really interesting set, and I definitely have mixed feelings on how, again, they were able to pull this off. It feels like for $70, maybe this should have been a little cheaper, but then when you look at the piece count, 791 pieces is actually pretty good for what you get. I couldn't really be fairly asking for much more. I guess I'm just a little bit let down by this set because I feel like they could have made it feel so much more dynamic. I mean, look at May's Guardian Dragon, or even at the dragon that we got for the Lunar New Year Festival series just at the beginning of this year, which felt like really flowing organic creatures. This feels more robotic, it feels more stocky, especially with the 90-degree angle the neck is mounted at. I just feel like this could have been so much more. Still, it's not a bad set in any right. I do like the minifigures included, even though they had to skimp out on printing for a few of them, and I do think it is a pretty decent LEGO Monkie Kid set. Just feels like kind of a middle of the range set, whereas if this was one part of a much larger wave, I feel like a lot of these sins would have been forgiven, but given that this is only the number 2 set out of 2, there are only 2 sets that came out this wave, there's gonna be a lot more scrutiny. Pretty much, that's all I have to say about this set and the prior one. Let me know down in the comments, what do you think of the direction Monkie Kid is taking? Do you think that this will be the final year for Monkie Kid, as many have suspected, or do you think it's just having a slightly smaller January wave like earlier this year, and it'll come back in the summer with many more sets? I guess only time will tell, but thank you so much for watching, and let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Be sure to stay tuned for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming your way very soon, and bye for now.